My name is Eric Kimondo, and in studio with us today, we have been graced with the presence of Mr. Simon Kamau, who is from OptiPro Limited, and he's here today to discuss with us the topic winning in the marketplace. And a subset of that, we are going to be looking into why businesses fail in our nation, and I know he's going to be giving us great insights of how we can navigate through that and win in the marketplace. Mr. Simon Kamau is an experienced business strategist who has worked in various industries across East Africa. He's also a certified human resource practitioner with over 10 years experience in driving efficiency and sustainable growth in founder-managed businesses. Simon believes that organization culture is a critical aspect of defining a business success, and he focuses on teamwork and a healthy, diversified environment to achieve this. Karibu sana, Mr. Simon, to PrayerCave TV Studios.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Say hi to our viewers. Pia ukituambia umetoka na sehemu gani?
My name is Simon Kamau. I'm a resident of Nairobi, but born and brought up in Kajiado, Loitokso. Yes. I'm really grateful and humbled to be here. Bless God and the extension of the Word of Faith and also the PrayerCave TV team for the session. Thank you. I'm humbled.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Karibu sana.
Yes.
Talk to us briefly about your work experience.
Right.
What are the areas you are working on currently?
Thank you very much, Eric. I'm a human resource manager by profession. I'm over 15 years of experience in a multifaceted dynamic. By that I mean, in terms of the industries, I've had hands on the deck within telecommunications, manufacturing, moving all through to service, and equally some input extending further into engineering, largely within the construction space. Looking at my own makeup in terms of now the experience, I've had one of the best moments to bring in valued inputs within the HR space, scanning through from the basic administration, that is looking into compliance, matters record keeping, and what it entails to really have a workforce aligned in terms of records.
Wow.
Of course, we also believe that human resource is a major component in every organization. So when it comes now to the operations efficiency, bridging the gap between the input of the human resource with the organization goals and objectives on a day-to-day basis. You know, just trying to see what is it that the human resource can put on the table to push an organization towards sort of pursuing its own set goals and objectives. And of course, we believe every organization or setup thrives in organization key result. Those are strategies. So then how do we come in and map the human resource with the vision in terms of now trying to create and pursue an understanding between that vision or vision bearer and the human resource at any given time within an organization. So to wrap up, that has been my tripartite experience, you know, at administrative, at operation efficiency, then spearheading upward within now the strategy in an organization.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing, amazing.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Getting now to the topic of discussion today, that is specifically winning in the marketplace.
Yes.
And we want to draw as much from your experience as possible. We want to learn everything that you have learned in 17 years in an hour.
Yes, yes. Pretty good, Eric.
So starting off with this, we've seen big brands closing shop in Kenya in the recent past.
Yes.
Why are businesses failing and collapsing in the Kenyan economy?
Thank you for that, Eric. I think of importance to note, if you came across the Business Daily, July this month, 11th, we had about 9,500 businesses which were ended up by the Register of Companies. That one is that's the information which is available from the business registry services. And of course, of concern is that we've picked both local and multinational brands actually being winded up, and some decided we no longer are viable to operate within the Kenyan space. So some of these brands which actually even had the government backing, one of them is the Intercontinental Hotel, with about 17% stake of the national government. But then still they came in to appoint a liquidator to come in, dispose whatever assets are there, so that we're in a position to sort of pay our own suppliers and customers and any other person that we owe. ShopRite, The Game, Choppies, and these are supermarket chains. And what we need to appreciate is that all of us will do shopping in one way or the other. So it's really a concern when you see now the winding up of these organizations from the food chains. And these are global markets which had come here to really invest quite huge sums of money, millions of shillings. By the end of the day, they realized this particular space is not really viable. So when you look at it now from the perspective of the international brands, what you would realize is that one, we have had really a major concern on our own taxation when it comes to the way of operating businesses in Kenya. Be it now on the licenses, moving from the licenses now, expanding all through now to the VATs in terms of input tax, and also extending all the way now to taxing every other input to the organization, be it now the foreign inputs that we are bringing locally to facilitate trade in Kenya. The other challenge, of course, has been on the cost of input, power. We've seen electricity really become quite expensive over time now. As much as the government is talking about going green, but they are still eating within the same space on taxation. So they are sort of trying to pursue investors to work around towards promoting the green energy, but at the same time making it unaffordable. Okay. If you go back now to the fiscal policies we've had, look at when it comes now to the lending rates, the cost of now the loans all together. Every other time CBK sits down, you'll always come across updates that we've moved our baselines from this position to this particular position. So all these inputs, if you evaluate them in a one-stop shop, what you're picking is that they're equally pursuing and moving now these investors to really hard to consider it in terms of now their continued operations in Kenya, because the situation is not really getting anywhere closer to being good, but rather it's actually escalating as time goes by, and that is on the international brands. If you come back now to Kenya, they go through the same experience as I have packaged in terms of now the taxation, the lending rates, and the cost of inputs. Then now within now the local brands, what we've actually picked to be quite expensive will either be mismanagement, aggressiveness to diversify and expand your markets without necessarily putting hands on the deck, research and surveys to just understand what is this expansion all about and what is it that I stand to benefit. One of the brands which found themselves in that particular mess is actually Nakumatt. By 2015, Nakumatt revenue turnover annual was about 50 billion. Today, as we speak, we do not have that retailer in the market. So what does that mean? The VAT gone, pay as you earn gone, NSSF, NHIF, employment. These people had suppliers, you know. They also are borrowing from various banks, you know. We had customers who are really convenient to shop within those particular outlets. And of course, now when you sit backward, and Eric, and now figure it out, the likes of Tuskies, the likes of Shoprite, Choppies, you know, the likes of game within that supply chain. What is it that is coming out? The government has lost annually from 2015 all through to 2021 close to 500 billion worth in terms of taxation, and the same input in terms of now the bucket expands to cover the various people looking at the social impact will really dependent on these particular retailers are their sole employers. So I think, to coming back to what you had raised, Eric, I strongly feel for international brands, really there is much to be done in terms of now carrying out research and feasibility study before you come in and decide this is the line I'm pursuing to invest. And equally now, extending now to the government really needs to rethink on how they can come up with a space and an environment through tariffs that really encourages some of these multinationals to come in and invest within the country. That way we're in a position to sort of have an economic impact and a social impact altogether. But then looking at the Kenyans, because as much as we lost about 9,500 businesses within 2015 all through to last year, 3/4 of these businesses are Kenyan owned. So what is it is a problem? 3 things. For Eric, today you will wake up and you want to start a water processing factory or setup. The fact that you've come across 1, 2, 3 proprietors of the same product, without you necessarily sitting down and to figure out what problem am I really solving? You know, what is it that I'm going to solve by putting up or setting up this particular water processing unit that will cost me a reasonable amount in terms of capital. Mind you, that capital is still restrictive in terms of access, very expensive in terms of now the finance cost, and it will equally now by extension push you to figure out to sort of like come out and in a way mortgage really what could be your property in terms of security or collaterals. So then you go through that process blindly without even trying to think big and broaden your mind as to what is it that I'm going to solve with this particular setup. That's number one. Is a problem that I'm sorting out basic, or is it a problem that actually has a value add in it? You know, everybody produces water and everybody will process water and purify water. But what problem, Eric, are you trying to solve? You know, are you setting up this particular factory in areas that do not have water and experiences water challenges, or you're coming in within Kiambu and setting up that plant? So what will be your niche market and what exactly are you trying to solve? Okay, so you move, you do the setup, that visibility and research has not been carried out. In the meantime, you are still spending and you're still tying out money, and the investment is already running and already taking shape. Then once you take shape, of course, you need your most critical resources. One of the resources is the human resources. So you will bring up a team of a sizable number. This particular team will come in and they will now embark to sort of market and move this particular product. But then the big question will be, from the onset, you really had not gotten it right as to why you need to put up this setup. You extend further and bring a team, which the fact that you had not gotten it right, you will not expect them to get it right. So what you have with you is a double tragedy, which is already taking shape. Okay, it's already taking shape. So these people will come in. You require again to set aside a budget that will indeed take care of their own salaries, allowances because of their mobilities, etc., etc. But mind you, these people are only coming in because of that pay, 8 to 5. So what happens? They warm the desks, they keep an eye on the watch. So what is happening with Eric? Eric, at the same time, he's trying to figure out, I've invested a reasonable amount of money. So what is it that is expected to come through these particular people? But the fact that you are not aligned now as that vision in terms of now that setup brings in even much more confusion, because you're not in a position to get it right, to create a space that these people will be operating in as far as moving this particular product to the market is concerned. So that is purely on the people. Then, of course, for that product to move, there is an element of the distribution cost, on be it vehicles, operating licenses, branding licenses, and of course you've noted what is happening with the current county governance, or rather devolution. Once you get out of Kiambu County to step to Nairobi, so long as it's commercial, there are licenses and taxes which are expected that you're going to pay. Okay? You will not assume you're operating within Kiambu, because Kiambu, Kajiado, Machakos, and Nairobi are now cosmopolitans. So they are more or less a single unit in terms of trade and operation. Okay? And now, from the vision to your critical resources, more so on the people, they are not aligned with you. Okay? They are not. But still, that loan or that capital injected, whether it's equity or debt, is still running in terms of the turnover as to how you're expected to repay it. Now, a combination of that vision plus your critical resources will shift you to put in place an organization capacity. The capacity, Eric, would mean for this particular setup in here, you can see the infrastructure, which is in here. That is what is mechanizing this conversation and broadcasting to the larger population who are your viewers, wherever they are. Now, in the absence of this, you will realize we cannot sit here and have this session. We could be in a hotel doing a one-on-one. So when you move now to the capacity level, you're looking at an organization in terms of now its own assets, its own equipment, its own systems, system including now this particular setup, structures, now looking into Eric as the visionary, a human resource team, be it in charge of finance, sales, production, etc., etc. Okay? Now, if you really don't have that straight line in terms of now understanding the vision and cracking to understand what is it all about that is in Eric's mind, how then do the two speak to each other to arrive into this particular capacity? Because if you have it right now between the two, the production manager will come and tell you what is your expected production capacity per day. 100,000 liters packaged into various quantities and SKUs. Okay? So what machinery are we going to acquire? You know, what capital does it require? Okay? How do we run that production process? But you know, now from the onset you came in and decided to do it on your own. Then you brought in people. Again, hands on the deck through the feasibility study. So you would realize now everything starts crashing. You cannot get it right in structures, because you will at one point wake up and tell the accountant to go and sell, and the production manager to run your numbers in terms of books of accounts. Your logistic guys will also be challenged to go into quality, because it's that confusion within the structure, considering how the whole thing had started. The whole confusion now push you harder on compliances. You cannot get it right with your own books. Remember, KRA is on your eyes. They expect you to report, and really report authentic numbers. You're not in a position now even to do your own filings of taxes or returns, because really you do not have those proper setups and structures that should come in and facilitate all this. So you sink yourself with compliance issues. As that is ongoing, you had borrowed. So your partners, that is the banks, are actually on you. We expected the turnover of these payments to be monthly these dates. No sales, nothing is coming in. So what happens to you and the banks? The conversation starts again. How are we going to recover our money? Suppliers who are giving you raw materials and supporting you within that value chain, same conversation. How do we move? So really, when you look at it, Eric, if the vision in terms of mapping from the initiation is not gotten right, then putting up resources in terms of human resource who have the right competences, attitudes, mindset, who understands this craft and can come in and reason with you, within that line itself, succession planning is affected. Then you cannot achieve the capacity. If you get it now, extremely that bad, you're either in receivership, winding up, mergers and acquisitions, or you're in profits or shareholder value if you crack it right.
You've described quite an extensive problem from multinationals that are operating in Kenya to Kenyan-based owned businesses. And a common factor seems to, we miss it in the feasibility study.
Yes.
And just give us insight on this, because we want to navigate through the murky waters of entrepreneurship, because there is need for entrepreneurship in our country.
Yes.
Because the employment rate is low, the number of jobs are not many for all of us. We need to do something with our hands. So where do we start with this feasibility study? How do we make sure we comb everything and avoid the blind spots before we get into entrepreneurship?
No, thank you, Eric. I agree with you. We must continuously not stop. The fact that we have seen quite a number shutting off vis-a-vis how many are coming up. One of the biggest mistakes or blunders that have come across, when an idea falls into your own mind, it's only fair and reasonable to put it in a perspective of practicality by way of figuring out this particular idea end to end. Okay? If today you decide to acquire a TV station, for example, let's just use that as an example. I think what you need to differentiate is the fact that at the end of the day, what drives you is the consumer. Okay? And that consumer will actually be owned by you because you're creating a solution. So how we get it right now within the feasibility study, the first question, Eric, every time before you do anything, you need to ask yourself, what problem am I solving? Okay? What is it that am I solving? It's not a matter of saying, Doreen has her own TV station, I'm going to also open mine. She's doing very well, you know? She's doing very well. So I think I can come up and open my own TV station. We work in the same TV station at some point, so I also need to come and open mine. So what you need to ask yourself, what problem are you solving in the first place? When you figure out and put it down in terms of now a problem statement, what comes through your mind is a thought process of how, in terms of now the approaches or the framework. You know, the framework is purely research, in that once you map a problem that you need to come out and fix, then what framework are you going to use to walk through a research or rather a fact finding to test that particular problem statement? Okay? By the time you are really running from the actions that you need to take, the approaches, the stakeholders, and the outcomes of that particular process, you will actually be in a state of mind, like, I need to proceed or not. Okay? Mind you, this particular discussion does not necessarily involve a monologue conversation. Not at all. Not at all, Eric. Usijiongeleshe. Usijiongeleshe. Shika mtu mmoja wawili, you know, share with them what is it that you are thinking or what you are imagining. It must not necessarily, me as Eric, I want to open a TV station. No. You can even test your idea through Felix. If a TV station was to be opened in this particular time and town and city, what do you think will be some of the issues that it will be addressing? You know, he'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ideas, and between 1 to 5, either one will be right or all of them will be dead. So if you go past 1, out of 5, there is a problem within that particular conversation. Because then you'll pick what we call a divided mindset and a divided attention. And you start now refocusing your mind within not a single purpose, but rather thinking and trying to figure out what is it I can do to do this and equally get it right. So you have like a double edge in terms of approach. So if you look at now for our case, what we are saying, how comes several businesses are failing within the Kenyan economy? That's how we have picked it. That single problem statement, okay? And the approach now becomes the conversation that we are putting here. That locally, these are some of the dimensions. Globally, these are some of the issues that needs to be addressed, largely by the government in this now perspective. But now, now getting back to what you had raised, still within the feasibility, now you've really crafted a problem statement, you decided the approach or framework that you're going to use, then once you have now the outcomes, you package it in form of a model. The model is a solution, in that at any given time, you're in a position to sell that particular solution to handle that problem statement within a bigger perspective or even small perspective, but you're getting it right. So how we need to package ourselves, let us not rush when it comes to our investment decisions and policies, but rather give it a thought process that includes figuring out that you are now, you as a vision bearer or the founder, you're now the consumer of that product. How many founders do we have, Eric, who have products that they cannot consume themselves? Have you? I don't know whether you have experienced that. Yes, you're a tailor, but you cannot, you do not necessarily make use of your own product. Now, how will you describe that?
Walisema hata CEO hapo anatumia iPhone.
So these conversations are not new. Then you expect that vision to go through. You expect you fixing clothing issues for the entire Kiambu town, na zako unaendea London. How does it work? Eric.
Wow.
How does it work?
It won't work.
Yes.
Wow. Now, getting deep into, let's now, through the advice that you've given us, we've got the feasibility question well.
Yes.
The policies well. We've positioned ourselves well.
Yes.
Now let's expound more now. Let's get into now operations, starting with the OKRs, so objective key results.
Yes. Of course, a mission is a simple, distinct statement, but that is what defines every other institution or every other enterprise. Within that particular mission, we're in a position to see where is it that this particular institution is headed in terms of the direction. Okay? So when you get now to the organization key results, you really need to come out and put in place what direction is it that you are heading and what approaches are you taking now in terms of the strategy. Okay? So you really mechanize that particular conversation to tell us, when I go to, let's say, Eric Clothing, this is exactly what we do or we offer to our own customers. Okay? And within 3 to 5 years of time, we will not only be operating within the Kenyan space, we will equally have expanded to the East Africa. Okay? Because we believe our own product in terms of quality, coupled with that vision now that has undergone that makeup process cumulatively, will actually have to come in at some point, outlive us either in terms of capacity and demand, or also equally in terms of when we go to the next world. Okay? So that particular mission and that particular strategy is what starts defining an organization culture. Because the culture is purely four-faced. You have that governing body or principle, and that is equally now the unification of that particular enterprise in terms of its setup. What do we as founder and as a team ascribe ourselves to? Okay, then of course we have now the structure. We had really touched about the structure. What is the flow of communication? How does decision making run? How do we go about approaching towards various issues, be it complaints, be it improvements, be it solution, be it policy development? Okay, then of course we have now our unity of purpose. Every other entrepreneur, Eric, usiwahi danganywa na mtu. Every other business which is set up, by the time you register that particular business with the register of company, there are no two purposes or objectives. It is one, profits.
Profit, yeah.
Peke yake. Ingine, people come in and say, you know, sisi tunakuanga, we just want to support people through our own initiatives and the likes. But then when you go internally, unakuta they also have audited books of accounts. They are chasing numbers, etc., etc. And of course, the last one in the culture is now the rituals. The rituals are now your own visions. You know, what is it that you have in terms of long term that you really need to pursue? So at this point in time, your setup is actually clear as to direction, as to what will actually be running for the next 3 years, and how do we go about in terms of dispensation of our mandate, etc., etc., and what is it that we are aiming at? Profits within, profits outside East Africa. Now, once you're through with that particular top line, in terms of now the definition and coming up with the required setup, the next item here will be now the human resources. You will assume, Eric, you have an employee among within your own organization who really has no idea what you have hired them to do. And this way, what do I mean? Either in terms of technically academia, what they studied in school, and in terms now on the job experience, they are equally challenged. So put yourself in that perspective of mind. They have no idea. This is someone who is in production. He does not even understand what that production is. So when it comes to human resources, and this is the biggest component that have seen organizations surrender. If you go to Nakumatt, fraud. People decided to trade with this particular retailer. Goods are being received, but are they really being received? And this information is all over. You can actually access it. So that particular person you hire or on board has to come in and have 3 attributes. One is a competence. Okay? As much as there is element of trainings on the job, but when it comes now to the fact that they must really get to understand their craft and discharge it in form of responsibilities and duties, that actually should not be negotiable. So that competence should never be in doubt. The next one will now be on their own attitude. A good attitude will always do anything. It's the mind. They will pick Eric as a founder or as the vision leader, flop in a certain process or discussion, and they will move with speed to correct them with suggestions and solutions that speaks to Eric's in terms of vision. Okay? Then number 3, that loyalty is very important, because if you are indeed working for the PrayerCave through the word of faith, but then when you step outside here, you're saying this is one of the difficult environments to work with, then what is it that we are saying? And remember, these employees are actually an ecosystem. They have friends, they have their relatives, they have their own families, they have colleagues, they interact with customers, they interact with suppliers, they interact with the banks, they carry you. These are simple as that. So when you have the right competence, the attitude and loyalty, your succession planning is fixed. So what do I mean with succession planning? If today God says, Simon, come, okay, OptiPro still has to run. because the vision and the team understands fully end to end. This is why we exist. Not this is why Eric exists. This is why we exist. And this particular team is the same people who will come, Eric, and now get it right in terms of structures. You know, from Eric, maybe Eric has a board of advisors, then he's a MD, then he has a team down here that runs the management, and they have their team in terms of now the execution. These are the same people who now mechanizes that structure, in that at any given time you have that flow of decision making, that flow of communication, that flow in terms of addressing what is it that you guys are specifically doing. So you will be interested to really also appreciate, even within now the church setup or any other, even in looking at the executive, you have the president who is the head of state. If you go to parliament, you have the speaker. If you go to judiciary, you have the chief justice. And that's the same structure I'm now trying to talk about.
Wow.
They independently operate. Then these are the same now people, the human resource, who put up systems. This is how we need to control how much we are spending on raw materials, be it fuel, how much we are processing in terms of our own taxation, when should we file our own returns and pay taxes, you know, what are our controls as far as our own spending and income is concerned, how do we invoice, how do we go about the reconciliation of debt, etc., etc. So you land into compliance with the government in terms of now the taxation, because these people are right. So they are now duplicating it at the capacity level to mechanize to achieve a seamless flow in terms of processes.
Simon.
Yes, Eric.
Let's pick this conversation up from organization capabilities and capacity.
No, thank you, Eric. Mapping the two, this is where succession planning begins. I know what could be going through your mind, and many of the viewers will be immediately the founder, or by extension the second generation. By the time it hits to the third, it's gone. You know, what is it that is a challenge? It's purely on succession planning. As much as you have it right in terms of the strategy and the direction and the journey that you need to undertake, the next question, or rather big discussion, will be how then does this particular entity or enterprise or business outlives myself? Okay. Outliving yourself means you've put up right mechanism in place to hand over, because it's purely handover. You might not necessarily go and meet your maker. You will also sort of like be of old age, so you're not in a position to continue running and managing that business end to end, and it has been. But you will equally appreciate the fact that you need these businesses to really live and continue serving and solving various problems as time goes by. So when you look at now the succession planning, it's purely founded on what critical resources do you have in place. And as I had mentioned earlier, one of the critical resources goes back still to the people. And I put it very clear, once you being now the founder or the vision bearer, if you have a team now through your structure that fully understands and onboards this particular business end to end, then there should be no gap or worry as to how that business should run. What is quite interesting with our economy as a country, as much as technology is evolving, we are still people driven. Africans are known to really operate and function in a relationship perspective, in that I have a relationship with you, so the extension to own the brand and continue trading as far as my clientele needs are concerned have been known to shift from an organization to a personal relationship in terms of now the looking at now the customer organization relationship. So what that means is that each and every organization should now come out and ensure and secure itself within the space of the capacity development. The capacity development will mean one day Simon will wake up and decide, I'm no longer interested in supporting OptiPro, for example. And you know how Kenyans behave. They'll just wake up one day, tell you we are on a sick off, 1 week, then the following week they tell you we have an emergency, then after an emergency the phone goes off. That's it. So the big question will be, this has been your sales manager, or your business developer, or your own accountant, you know, or your own operations manager, or your own projects manager. So what happens when they wake up one day and tell you and start taking you through the cycles, all rounds. So the element of technology, putting up systems and infrastructures that holds customers information, be it on the progress, the milestone, the expectations, and even closure, becomes very critical. You will struggle to replace this particular individual who has all of a sudden either resigned, or either deserted, or either decided I'm no longer interested. You will also, it will just require you now to go back, since you had the right team in terms of makeup in terms of their own competency, their attitude and loyalty, and pick one of them to come in and fill the shoes of this particular gap that has come in. But for them to take up, they need a foundation that now onboards them to take off, in that they are not in a position, they are not at any given time struggling to understand how is it that Simon was operating and interacting with the word of faith. You know, where did the journey begin? Where is the journey currently is? They are not struggling, because the gap that we cover ourselves through data management and information management becomes quite critical when somebody has to come in and take over certain roles or position. So as much as we will invest much on the people, which becomes quite primary, our secondary has to be now embedded through now the rightful structure, which now maps to draw the vision downhill to the people, and the same is now reflected when it comes to the organization capacity, in terms of the structures, the systems, the compliances, and equal now looking into your own stakeholders in a bigger perspective in terms of continuity. Yes. Yes.
Wow. What can companies do to mitigate these issues that we have described?
For me, that's a very strong observation. Every time you're in a problem, you sort of like either sick or unwell. So you first need to appreciate that I'm unwell. You sort of have to need just to admit, from this particular conversation we're having here in PrayerCave, through word of faith, I strongly feel there could be some gaps that I have within my own self as a person, be it an employee, or in this case being a founder. You rightly feel that in terms of your manpower and your capacity, something is not right. Okay? So once you admit, you start now the recovery process. And the recovery process is very simple. OptiPro comes in and gets now to sit and understand you at the vision, understand you through your own competency, and understand you through your capacity. How do we get to understand? An interaction and a process which is followed through an audit process. And the audit process is purely involving both now the business side and OptiPro arm in terms of sitting and consolidating the mind to understand what gaps could we have in place that we can come in and collaboratively address and get back to our runway. So it's purely appreciate. Something is sort of amiss, I'm not sure. Can I have OptiPro come in? We have a conversation.
Diagnosis, yeah.
You know, yes,
carry
out a diagnosis. Yes.
Sick businesses.
Sick businesses. You know, because Eric, look at it. I'll give you a very simple concept. If today you wake up and you feel like you have a headache, what is it that we normally do? You rush into a chemist, they'll give you some painkillers, you'll come back, swallow them very fast, they will relieve the pain. Okay? Then the following morning, same experience. Then you as a person, you become your own doctor. You figure out it's either a migraine or I think I'm receiving a lot of stress from so many quarters. Okay? Go back, they'll give you a more stronger painkiller to relieve the pain. But what is it that OptiPro is talking about? We need to go through a hospital approach. You are unwell, you need to accept, I think the feeling that I have with me, I'm not okay. So what happens? I'll walk into a hospital, the registration details are taken, you're taken through the process. The triage, your own blood pressure, temperature, and of course the clinic officers will engage you. What is it that you are feeling? Some headache, nini. Then from that point in time, you are referred now to the doctor. When the doctor engages you, they'll decide whether you go into lab for further testing before they prescribe medication. And why blood pressure kills so many people in this country, in Africa, we assume blood pressure headache is a normal headache and migraine. And the blood is running very fast. But if you go through the chemist, strong painkillers, go to the hospital, Eric, you have high blood pressure, this is a medication, this is what you need to do in terms of prescription. And you take control of your own lives. So that's basically how we can fix this particular problem. We stop the chemist, we go into the hospital system, and we get to recover ourselves. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
Let me ask this for our viewers, because I know the question is always, are consultancy services affordable? How much does it take to assess a business and its feasibility from a consulting point of view, cost?
No, thank you very much. Number one, the single problem we are solving is that business are shutting down. So what OptiPro is out to do is to create an impact in that organizations outlive the owners. That is the immediate impact. Okay? Number two, when it gets now to our engagements, until we go through that hospital process of getting to understand what issues would you be going through, then we cannot come and say, Eric, we have a 250 invoice for you. What if you do not have any issues? You only needed some, you know, sometimes you talk to someone and you go back to the cost, and I have charged you 250. So we will only get to agree on terms of now the commercials. When you get to establish what is the exact gap.
But can you say it's affordable? Yes.
Very
affordable.
Very much affordable.
So, you know, sometimes we end up losing a lot of money in trial and experiments other than go the consultancy route because of the perception that consultancy is expensive.
Very much affordable, Eric. You'll have services which will go for 100K. Some will tell you just come and do an audit for me, about 50,000. Some will tell you we need a journey for about 6 months. We'll equally agree, is it 150, is it 200? And some will even tell you we need to be investor ready in terms of now packaging your own finances and your financial reporting. So that process again will be like, how structured are you for us to access to that information, and how do we involve you before a panel of investors who now you are looking forward to come in and either do an equity or a debt, which is another process in terms of now the deliberation on fees. So they're very much affordable, Eric, even for you as a person. And apparently one of the products which you are running now, besides now the organization, is purely now touching on the individual employees, because we've realized that disconnect, that 83% on the desk and on the wall is a reality.
Research by Gallup, yeah.
Yes, is a reality, and it came in after we had launched our first cohort of competence bootcamp. We are bringing people to synergize them to understand an organization as an ecosystem as a whole at a fee of about 15K.
Wow, wow.
Yes. Yes.
In Kenya, opportunities are there. As you've told me, we've not even scratched the surface of the opportunities that are in this country. In business, it is doable. Some of the common mistakes that we do as entrepreneurs when getting into business is quick rush, lack of research, not thinking it through, not laying the right kind of foundations. But help is available. We have business doctors. Your phone number, 0725 090 430. Again? 0725 090 430. So we have doctors for businesses.
Oh yes.
who can rightfully assist. I've picked up something that from that before you invest that 100,000 that you have, take 60 or 100 days thinking it through again and again and again and again. Crack your head around it. Do the hard work of thinking, and things will go on well. But on top of all that, we wish upon you the grace of God, even as you run your business.
Thank you.
And with all the grace and the wisdom of God that He gives, that is going to help us as a nation. We continue establishing ourselves in the pillar of our economy. And we thank God for the resources that He has given us. That brings us to the conclusion of the show. Thank you so much for the insights, the hard facts that you have.
Thank you.
Wewe ni ule daktari.
Thank you. Thank you.
The hard one.
Thank you.
No beating around the corner. Thank you so much for your coming and for your sacrifices. Asante sana for coming. Our special appreciation goes to God Almighty for this time and opportunity that He has given us, and for the gift of life and for the knowledge. You know, I love hosting a lot of people. I see the goodness of God. Hey, God is so broad and so wide. We thank God. Our special honor and appreciation goes to Bishop Dr. Thomas Mothe and Reverend Phyllis Mothe. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your prayers. We thank you for your labors in the Lord. We thank you for this platform. Na tunashukuru sana.